You put war on the masses, and then you clean out the purse.
Good morning, K-Mun listeners. It is 9 a.m. We've got 47 degrees outside the studios here in Redway, California. You got it tuned to the mud, KMUD Garberville 91.1 FM and HD1, KMUE Eureka 88.1 FM and HD1, KLAI Laytonville 90.3 FM, on the web at kmud.org, FM translator K258BQ Shelter Cove 99.5. I'm Javi, be helping to facilitate Heroes and Patriots with Mary Massey and John Sakowitz. Stay tuned.
Disguise. Yeah, disinformation. It's like worms in your eyes. You privileged bankers. You gambler thieves.
Remember, the views and opinions expressed throughout the broadcast day are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of the station, its staff, or underwriters. Time will be made available for other viewpoints. Thanks for joining us.
Coming to you live from the studios of KMUD, this is Heroes and Patriots. Heroes and Patriots is a program about national security, intelligence, and foreign policy. Today is Thursday, February 1st, 2024, and we are very glad that all of you have joined us. I'm Mary Massey with my terrific co-host, John Sakowitz. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mary. Good morning to our audience listening to the live broadcast here in Northern California and to listening throughout the country and the world on the web stream. We have a very important show today. It follows our show last month about Israel's war crimes in Gaza. And today we'll be talking about Israel's nuclear arsenal, over 400 warheads, and something that they call the Samson option, which is very briefly stated, if they feel like they're in danger of losing a war, if they're invaded and feel like they're in danger of losing a war, they will literally blow up the Middle East with their 400 warheads. Some of those warheads, incidentally, are pointed at European targets as well. This is a doomsday plan. It's a plan to, in the words of one Holocaust survivor, to return the world to the Holocaust if Israel is in danger of losing the war. We have a great guest, a great show. Mary's prepared hard for it, and I can't wait to go.
And today's program and all programs will be archived at kmud.org, our program website, heroespatriots.org, and Facebook and YouTube. So if you'd like to hear the program again or share it with other listeners or friends, please do so. As he mentioned, Javier Rodriguez is our engineer today. We thank him so much. And I want to remind listeners that they can call in with a question on topic. The number to call, 707-923-3911. In today's program, John and I will be speaking with Sharon Dolev. Ms. Dolev is the founder and the director of the Israeli Disarmament Movement, or IDM, a co-founder and executive director of the Middle East Treaty Organization, METO, and she is an Israeli campaigner for the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize winning International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN. This is her first time appearance on Heroes and Patriots, and we are delighted that she can be with us. Sharon Dolev, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm very delighted to be with you. Always nice to be interviewed by leftists.
So in past programs, we have discussed, as John mentioned, the conflict from October 7th. It's now reported that just under 27,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly children and women. There's been a couple recent developments. The United Kingdom is considering the idea of recognizing a Palestinian state to advance a two-state resolution to diffuse the Israeli-Hamas war. And secondly, South Africa has accused Israel of violating international laws on genocide written in the wake of the Holocaust, and to the accusations to the International Court of Justice to order Israel to cease fire in Gaza. While the court did not order Israel to cease fire, as South Africa had hoped, the ruling represents a blow to Israel, which had hoped the case would be dismissed outright, which of course it wasn't. Ms. Dolev, would you talk about these recent developments and what stands out to you as the conflict enters its fourth month?
So it's a very complicated question, and there was also what John said before, and I hope that you'll still want me on the show afterwards, but I want to start with a disclaimer. I'm 54 years old. I've been human rights and peace activist since I'm 14. That's what I do.
Okay.
I don't gain money from that. I always have to find, so I don't do it for profit. I do it because I believe. And that's also why I'm doing disarmament. I dedicated my life to it. I think that the conflict in the Middle East is complicated enough and heartbreaking enough without making it things that it's not and without using unhealthy language. And I'll explain, if you don't mind.
No,
Cut
please.
me at any point, point.
Go ahead.
I'm an Israeli, yeah? Let's talk about my identity for a second. I'm stealing the show. I'm Israeli, and I'm a peace activist. I don't think I need to prove it anymore. I'm a peace activist. I put myself in danger when needed. I have complex PTSD from my activism, apart from other things, because it's not always nice or easy. I have a plaque, an official plaque of a wounded of the Intifada, because I was standing in solidarity and got shot in the territories. I'm saying all that just to say that there are some things that are horribly not helpful in any conversation about the Middle East and about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, to be a peace activist, I chose. To be an Israeli, I was just born like that. There was not much I could do. I'm also a bit British, and I'm also a bit half Yemeni, so I'm also Arab in a way. And just to show that everything is always a bit more complicated.
Right.
Always. So just to begin, Israel doesn't possess 400 nuclear warheads. We don't know how many nuclear warheads Israel has, and that's part of the problem. But according to scientists, not Israelis, that has measured how much capacity Dimona has and so on, like CIPRI, and there's some enough organizations, they would now claim that the number is closer to 80. Is it enough to blow up the Middle East? Yes. Missiles pointed at Europe, there are no evidence of that. Like, not that we know, and trust me, I'm trying to find anything about the program. There's no evidence on that. So to use this kind of information, and I'm not saying that you're doing it on purpose, is not helpful, because the truth, the reality, the occupation, trust me, I've been in Gaza for many, many years as part of my activism, and I was investigating what's going on there, not to try and show the world, but in order to sue the army for every wrong bullet, right?
Right.
To try to get families together and so on. And I've done it for years, so I can tell you that the occupation is horrible enough without adding to it things that do not exist. And why? Not because I'm trying to defend Israel, though Israelis have the right, to be defended. And what happened in October 7th will wound us forever. And one of the things that the left Israeli that I've realized is that most people in the world don't really care. They think we deserve it, and no human deserves anything like this, just like no Palestinian human, because no human deserves things like this. And if something that the October 7th showed me with my colleagues around the world is that sometimes they forget that the fight is not between Israel and the world. The fight is between those who will pursue peace no matter what, and those who think that war is a solution. That's the division, and that's the only division I'm willing to participate in.
Right. John?
Those who are already with us, and those who we still need to persuade. That's it.
Well,
That's
what
peace.
other, you mentioned that you think that there's, or evidence is that there's 80 perhaps nuclear warheads. What other myths are coming out that we need to pay attention to that is flat out wrong or suspicious? I know the media has been very instrumental in portraying a certain way of how things look. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, first, the Israeli media is horrible. Okay, like most media,
Mhm.
I am sure that you have the same problem with the U.S. main media.
We do.
What is the truth that they choose to show if they show the truth, right?
Right.
I'll give you an example about the nuclear discourse in Israel. When there's zero nuclear, when I started the campaign in 2007, most of my friends thought that I'll be killed by the end of the year, right? Because Israel wouldn't tolerate a discourse. So I found my way of going directly to the UN, speak it every time, so everybody knows me, and I thought that that's give me a safety umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And with this safety umbrella, I went to talk to everyone I could in Israel about nuclear weapons and realized that most Israelis, when they hear what are the consequences of nuclear war anywhere in the world, believe immediately or will join. If I'll go to a room that is totally hostile, and most rooms in Israel I enter begin to be totally hostile. When you talk about the consequences of nuclear war, they want to get rid of nuclear weapons. But they need to feel secure to do it. Because, I mean, if the US, the greatest country in the world, feel more secure because you have nuclear weapons and you haven't managed to get rid of your nuclear arsenal, how can you expect a tiny state surrounded by enemy states that some of them still don't recognize its right to exist, to give up its weapons? So, what we've done in our campaign was not to go for shaming Israel, nor did we go to shame the Arab states that didn't create the situation that will allow a conversation, not for real.
Right.
And what we've done was we went and talked to the Israelis, we went to talk to the Arabs, we went to talk to the Iranians, and with the knowledge that we understood, with what we took, with their fears, with their obstacles, with everything, we managed to see what really scares them. And then take it forward into a draft treaty that is now being negotiated at the UN for a weapon of mass destruction free zone in the Middle East. Now, that's what I think is a peaceful action, because you not just pushing them to do something, you give them a vision to look at. Now, as long as the Israelis internally hardly talk about it, as long as I get to Israelis only when I manage to go and talk to them directly, when the media don't have any experience in talking about nuclear weapons because it's kind of forbidden, it's not really, by the way, they just think it's forbidden. So if they don't have any way of talking about it, then the same media that doesn't believe a word that come out of Netanyahu's mouth, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to nuclear weapons, they mimic everything he say because he's the one that knows. But when it comes to nuclear threats, the minister that said that we should use nuclear warhead on Gaza is somebody that nobody knew his name until he said that. So does it show a state of mind of the extreme right wing? Yeah, and that's not new. Just like extreme right wing everywhere in the world is usually willing to get rid of the other as a solution. Is it really Israel's intention to use nuclear weapons in Gaza? It's more ridiculous than, this minister is more stupid than anything else because the proximity doesn't allow us to use nuclear weapon in Gaza. All of Israel will be affected by it. It's more stupid than anything. It's also on our west. All the wind will come into Israel. It's more stupid than anything else, but look how the world got it. Gave this stupid man much more power because he fell into the narrative of aggressive Israel. Is Israel aggressive? Yes, very. But we need to ask why. What made a society go this way? If we won't look at this society with the same compassion that we look at any society, we won't find a path forward that then we can pursue and offer. And that's why this discourse that is happening now is so unhealthy, because it's a discourse that totally neglect one side, take one side, you find all the reasons why it's okay and moral to only look at one side, and somehow that's supposed to work when it never worked anywhere in the world. Only when you look at both sides and willing to put them together or to face their fears when finding a solution, only when you can allow them to dream, to imagine a solution, you can make a difference. We can't do it without the international left. It won't happen. But right now, the international left is not ready to do anything constructive, sorry to say so, when it comes to this conflict, because you're still going with what seems like justify. But it's not good. Not good enough. Not. It feels good, but it doesn't do anything. I'm sorry to say.
John?
Sharon, the reason I mentioned the Samson option is because it may not be talked about in Israel much, but here in the United States, particularly on Fox News and in a place called InfoWars, which is a far right wing publication and Breitbart News, it's talked about quite a bit. In the beginning of the war in October, Fox News host Mark Levin, he's got his own show, and he's Jewish. Mark Levin, they call him the Great One. How about that for hubris? Mark Levin, they call him the Great One. He went on an unhinged rant back in October, urging Israel to consider using the Samson option. Nobody shut that guy up. And he arrogantly scolded a fellow Fox News host for suggesting that America stay out of Israeli wars. I mean, the fact that Fox News would give this guy a platform, that other commentators would support him, a guy by the name of Ben Shapiro, who then later came on a future show and supported Mark Levin's comments on the Samson option, just scares me to death. As an American sitting here, just surfing through channels, watching the news, watching news commentary, I want to take these threats seriously. How did an Israeli peace activist such as yourself, measure a guy like Mark Levin? How do you measure up to him? How do you? I mean, you can't silence anybody. They have a right to free speech. But how do you, recognize him for what he is, a demagogue?
So you just recognize him for what he is. But if you repeat what he says as if it's important, then you give him power. Now, look, I'm a brown woman. It means that most of my life I've been ridiculed, right? And a brown woman talking about nuclear weapons. But these guys, they're never being ridiculed. I mean, I just told you that throwing a bomb on Gaza will destroy Israel. At least half of it. It will get to Tel Aviv. I mean, there's no way. So it's so stupid. But this guy gets to be speaking like most white men with lots of confidence in a network that supports Trump. I mean, what else can I say? Right. So Trump is stupid. Can I say this on this radio?
Oh, sure. You can say whatever. Yes.
Okay. Trump is an idiot that somehow is going to come back again to be the most powerful man in the world. There's this network in a democratic state. You don't have what we have, like ambiguity and security. They actually can research and find what they want, and still people are going to vote for Trump. I mean, I think we have a major problem in media altogether. And when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, again, I'm not trying to deflect, sorry, it's my second language, deflect from what Israel is doing in Gaza. Right. It's horrible. The occupation is horrible. War is horrible. And what happened to us in October 7 is horrifying. And I can tell you that personally, I don't think that most of us will recover from that. Just like I don't think, and if the world, and especially those who want to find a solution, won't see that there's a society here that is hurt, you won't be able to talk to us in a way that will allow us to let off our guards and march for peace and disarmament. And that's why it's so important for me to get this voice out there.
Right. So how do we get to a solution? I guess I guess that's really the crux of the matter. It's and I'm not pretending this is easy. You know, this conflict has been going on for 7 years, 70 years.
More,
How do more longer since the end of World War II?
No, it's a 100-year conflict.
100-year conflict. How do we get to a solution? And what is the solution? Is it a two-state solution? Is it something else? How do we get there, Sharon?
Okay, so if it's okay with me still rambling, I'll tell you what we've done in my organization about what was perceived to be impossible. When we talked to all diplomats from Israel, the Arabs, and we talked to all of them, and the Iranians included, we kept asking them, you keep voting for a weapon of mass destruction free zone in the Middle East, but you don't do any constructive steps forward. You don't really push for the zone. And I didn't see any, and I started to look for any draft, for every proposal, for how it looks like, right? And when I came to all the experts, I'm just an activist. When I went to all the experts, the professors, the diplomats, and asked them for a model, they said that this model is impossible. So I said, if the model is impossible, why you keep voting on something that you say it's impossible, right?
Right.
Impossible. So then, because I'm an activist and because I don't suffer the burden of knowing all the details of why it's impossible, I wrote a model. And this model is now being negotiated, right? So the same way here, what helped me find a model that actually worked, and when I asked a British man, because only a white man could have sent it to all those ministries for them to read it seriously, right? Not me. And when they answered back and said, wow, that's a model that might work, okay? The only reason that I managed to write something that these experts said impossible was because I did only one thing. I imagined that the states actually want something that they said that they want to. I imagined that they want to, and suddenly I have a model that everybody say might work. The same here. Is it two-state solution, one-state solution? I go with two-state solution because even if we'll have an agreement on one-state solution, it will still be two societies, the occupiers and the occupiee. There's lots of feeling and trust building that can only be done in a two-state solution, in my eyes. In 2002, the Arab League proposed the Arab Peace Initiative. They said that for the three core issues of refugees, Jerusalem, and the borders, not just that there will be peace between Palestine and Israel, but all the Arab world will not just say peace like that, what we have now, but it will be actually end of conflict and normalization. And Iran said that they will not interfere. Beautiful, right?
Right, right.
Great solution.
Yeah.
However, Israel never answered that, and the Arab League never promoted it, even that though in the language of the Arab Peace Initiative, it says that they're supposed to promote it. In 2008, I was the first, it was written in 2002. In 2008, I actually printed all of it and gave it to every delegate at the UN. And the Arab League was a bit crossed with me, but now we're good friends. Because
yeah,
really we're good friends. I'm the only Israeli ever to set foot in the Arab League mission. And there are a lot of working together and thinking together about solutions for WMDs, right?
Right.
In the region. So you take the same approach of we need to solve it. There are solutions. We just need to show something that might work. And I believe that if we'll take the Arab League proposal, the Arab Peace Initiative, and if we will add some more regional components, because it's 20 years old and we need to update it a bit,
right,
then this is something that if all of us will campaign for it, wow, it might work.
It's 23 minutes past the hour. If you've just joined Heroes and Patriots, we're speaking with Sharon Dolev, and we're talking about the solutions in between Israel and Gaza. If you'd like to ask a question of our guest or comment, 707-923-3911. Go ahead, John.
Yes, Sharon, there's as you know, there's a long history of trying to achieve an Israeli-Palestinian peace accord. I guess most notably the Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel, which included discussions on plans for what they called Palestinian autonomy. but did not include any Palestinian representatives. The autonomy plan would not be implemented, but its stipulations would go to a large extent to be represented in the Oslo Accords. Give our listeners a little bit of history as to what the peace process has been like in years past, and how and why it failed.
It's failed, yeah.
Okay, so it's a complicated, and I'm trying to keep things simple, but let's say that when I was a kid, it was known that, I mean, we were pushed to paint paintings of peace. Okay, our hands are extended in peace was a line that all of us knew, right? So what happened between then and now? Between then and now, we had our first peace agreement with Egypt and then with Jordan. They weren't as nice as they looked, and they came with a price. They came with giving back land. Funny enough, by the way, no one wanted Gaza then, right? With the peace agreement with Egypt.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, Gaza in '67 was liberated by the Israelis. It When I say liberated, I'm saying it, of course, with I forgot the name. Yeah, but we were very welcome there, right? I mean, rice and flowers, and for several years there was no border. I mean, I used to live in the south. Gaza was a place to go. And they used to come to us, and then we had projects in there, and they had projects with us. I mean, it was open. But when real peace between Israel and Palestine started to take form, for example, in the Oslo Agreement, two things happened. As I said, there are those who want peace and those who oppose peace. With the Oslo Agreement came also a wave of terror attacks by those who didn't want the Oslo Agreement, right? So on one hand, you have lots of terror attacks. I mean, every time you leave the house, you don't know if the bus you're taking is going to blow up. Now, I know, again, most people don't see how it affects day-to-day life when every day. I mean, I'll give you an example. We're going for a demonstration, get harassed by the police, get harassed by people, and then after it's over, we want to go to our cafe. Lucky enough, we were harassed enough by the police not to get to our cafe that was blown up. A lefty cafe, very nice cafe, blown up. So when it comes to your day-to-day, you start thinking, who is the partner? Now, if you're a strong believer in peace, you'll continue. But if you're not as strong believer, and if the prime minister is being murdered, and if the one that was brave enough to pursue it, even though the price was high, and that's the high price, not just giving up territories, but to actually start an internal war with the settlements. Now, if you want to understand, the hardest part is this. Once we realize that it's a war between Israel and the settlements won, because most Israelis don't understand that it's the settlements that hold us hostage.
Sharon, we have a caller who has a question or comment. Caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question.
Good morning, and let's hope that more people can be peacemakers as well as modeling that into being a hero as well as a patriot. Thank you for joining us this morning, young lady, Mary and John. My name is Mark. I'm calling from Laytonville. In reference to media disillusionment, I want to point out very briefly on point, National Public Radio, which I refer to as National Propaganda Radio, has over the last month on our airwaves in this country, the United States, supposedly united, has consistently broadcast sunny news about Israelis staying in hotels because they've been displaced from their homes, while ignoring the topic of what's happening with the abomination in Gaza. In reference to a solution, I'd like to ask if we could step back a bit. You talked about counting bullets. Let's go to October 6th and 7th and recognize, as has been reported in some world media, that the Nova Rave was moved, that the licensing was suspended for a brief period of time, and then the IDF was pulled back. Israel was very prompt in calling it their 9/11. And it is very similar to the 9/11 in this country because it seems like it was state-sponsored, that it was allowed to happen in order to foment a further digression against peace. Thank you so much. Let's all be more pacifist in our attempts to be heroes and patriots. Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum and shalom.
Thank you, Mark.
Shalom, Mark.
Sharon?
I'm sorry. What Hamas did on October 7 was horrible, not excusable. This is not how you fight for peace. No, we did not participate ourselves in our own murder, and I want to remind most of you that the vast majority of the people that were massacred, raped, beheaded are leftists from the south of Israel, not territories. They were not settlements. They were not settlers. Most of them were part of this program of driving people from Gaza to hospitals in Israel and so on. So I will not answer this kind. But what I will say is that one of the hardest things that happened to the peace camp in Israel was this meeting between Barak and Arafat, right, in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And this meeting, Barak already knew that if he's not coming back with an achievement, then he's going home, right? So he tried to push, and he actually pushed Arafat literally in Camp David into the room and gave him a take it or leave it plan that Arafat couldn't have agreed to. But then Barak came back and said, I gave him 97% of the territories, and he still said no. Now, most people took that as an example, and Barak said it himself, that there's no partner. And that was more or less the beginning of the huge slide of the peace camp. If they don't say yes to peace, and nobody actually, usually go and look at the maps and exactly why Arafat said no. Usually people just take news as they are. You get the news from CNN and you believe them. Some people even believe the news they get from Fox News, right? So you get the news, you understand, you believe. Arafat said no to a 97% agreement. There's no partner. And if there's no partner, then what are we doing? Okay? And that was the beginning of the end. And that was also false news, which is why I get less and less patient for false news.
Sharon, I want you to know that I've been to Israel several times. I am a direct descendant of Kazimierz Sakowicz. You can Google him up. He was the first journalist to document the mass murder of Jews in World War II. And he was later hunted down by the Nazis and killed. I'm passionate about peace in Israel and in the Middle East because I believe that if a third world were to ever start, it would be ignited over a tiny strip that we know as Gaza or someplace like Gaza. We mentioned the Camp David Accords and the Oslo agreements, and the peace process has been grinding on and on and on, as you know. And grinding is a good word, just grinding. Despite the failure of the peace process to produce a final agreement with Camp David Accords and the Oslo Agreement, the international consensus, as you know, for decades supported a two-state solution to the conflict based on UN Security Council Resolution 242 and 388, which included the establishment of an independent Palestinian state under the pre-1967 borders, including East Jerusalem, and a just solution for the refugee problem based on the Palestinian right to return. And that was embodied in United Nations General Assembly Resolution 194. And this is in sharp contrast to the current situation under the interim agreement under the Oslo Accords, in which the Palestinian territories are highly fragmented under Israeli military control and the Palestinian National Authority, which only has self-rule in Area A, in the West Bank, and in the Gaza Strip. What happened between the UN resolutions and this situation where we now have a highly fragmented Palestine? What happened?
I don't know that I remember exactly, the details, but there was a 47 decision, right? To have. Now Israel didn't exist then, but the Jews, as far as I know, agreed. The Arabs didn't. And then we had the 48 war, right? The 48 war, the parts that were supposed to be Palestinians, some of them were taken by Israel. And that created the Nakba. But the Nakba didn't come because one day, as I was faced in an interview 2 weeks ago, the Nakba didn't start because one day the Jews decided to kick out the Arabs. Okay? Now, whether Zionism acted in a smart, good way, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, there's no way around it. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but it still, it didn't happen in a vacuum. That too didn't happen in a vacuum. The way that we acted in the 48 war was not like angels, I mean, like war, and there were atrocities. And in this army that was actually like mostly by newcomers, knowing that it's a live or die kind of war, it's not a war that if you win your economy get hit a little bit. I'm sure that atrocities were made. I know that atrocities were made, but that's what happened in war. That's why we're against war. In 67, we got the territories, we got East Jerusalem, and the first thing that we should have done then, if we were smart, was to give them a state, or at least some kind of autonomy, real autonomy, to build something. I mean, we didn't know what to do. We were a very young country by then. I mean, how do you think that you can take control over the life of so many people? And at that time, you need to believe what I say. We still believed in a morality army, right? We still believe, some people still believe until today that we have a very moral army because we don't want to, but, because it's not in our agenda, but we're forced to, and so on. And this, if you don't believe this core belief, again, you won't be able to understand Israelis. Now, controlling people, you can't control people and maintain human rights. That's why nobody should control anybody. The occupation is horrible. You talk about grinding peace process. I don't see it like this. I don't think that there was ever a real peace process, if you ask me. Because never the sides were willing to really face the questions, the core questions. Never. They never asked about refugees, never talked about Jerusalem. Not really. The core issues were not faced. But also, if you ask yourself about the refugee problem, how come people that are being born in other states don't get citizenship? Because the refugee problem is not just a real problem of people being displaced, it's also a political question, and the refugees are being victimized by this conflict and by the states hosting them, just like they're being victimized in Israel. Because after 75 years, there's no longer an excuse for not giving them rights where they are.
Right.
And I'm not saying it again to deflect from Israel. I'm just saying there is a solution, but we need to be honest in order to find the solution. And we need to bring all parties to the table with a model that might work. And that's what we want to do. And I invite you to book us for a talk. Come into our website and invite my Iranian colleague and me to talk about these things, because we're working very hard on a solution.
We would love to do that. Can we do that?
Really, of course. We just want our voice out there.
All right. If any media property will do it, KMUD will do it.
Right.
This is a community radio. It's owned by the people. It's operated by the people. We're for the people, by the people, and all of that good stuff. I had a follow-up question. How did this Maximus view that that is now held by many, the Hamas's view that Israel must die, that the ultimate aim is going to be the destruction of Israel? When did that start? It didn't start with Hamas. Did it start with Yasser Arafat? Give our listeners a little bit of history as to where this all or nothing view, this Maximus view, or this annihilation view came into being. How did that all come into being?
I think in some fractions it came 100 years ago, and that's not. It's not surprising. I mean, and it's also it doesn't bother me. Not sorry, not it bothers me only because it's aimed against me, and I would like to exist, and also because it's not helpful. But I think that every society will always have the groups that want to annihilate somebody or something, right? So, and I can understand that. So I don't think that Arafat started that, but Arafat did the peace accords, right? And I actually met him in Gaza when he just arrived to Gaza because I was an activist there. But I want to also remind that Hamas was built in order to fight Arafat within the Palestinian society,
Right.
and that those who contributed to Hamas then and now were our governments, then and now, right? Just like, if I'm not mistaken, the US with Al Qaeda, right?
Right.
Right.
We're really, really good at shooting ourselves at the feet. I mean, we always have this notion that we can control others by divide and conquer, and usually it backfires. It backfires. So I'm wondering when humanity will understand that it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. That we create our own monsters.
It's 40 minutes past the hour. We have about 20 minutes left. We are speaking with Sharon Dolev. Sharon, I want to circle back a bit to your activism. You entered all of this to see the end of weapons of mass destruction, both in the Middle East and beyond. Can you talk about what your latest efforts are? How is your effort going? You have been involved with ICANN. We've had other guests on from ICANN. And could you update us on where things are with your greater effort?
Sure, I'd love that. So in 2007, we started the campaign in Israel, and the beginning was actually to find out how do you, and if you can, do a campaign on something that you're not supposed to talk about. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
And the beginning was the question: do we fight the ambiguity, or do we fight nuclear weapons? And the decision I made was to fight nuclear weapons because that will fight the ambiguity by itself. And I see that we have a chorus, so should I continue after?
Well, let's take it real briefly and then circle back if
Sure.
it's unrelated. Caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question. Well, I don't hear them. Sharon, if you want to just continue with what you were speaking, maybe we can get them back on the line.
Sure. So that was the beginning of the campaign in Israel, and what we've done in Israel was to create the Israeli Disarmament Movement. We've done with Greenpeace then, and with activists that join, we've done many activities inside Israel just to see if you can talk about it and what happens. And actually, it created quite a buzz, and we managed to get some demonstrations for Israel. It's quite a lot on this topic of 300 people and more against bombing Iran at the time, and finding a solution when even Obama said all options are on the table. And if you remember, all options didn't include negotiations at the time. We managed to do a series of non-violent direct actions in front of the American embassy, in front of the Israeli Ministry of Defense, blocked roads and so on, and managed to get this discourse out there, even internally in Israel. So we managed to, on one thing, to get a kind of discourse, even if not a good one yet, there's still a lot to go. Outside of Israel, as I said before, we started this mapping of what are the obstacles. Why do states say that they want to have a weapon of mass destruction-free zone, and at the same time they say it's impossible? And we started with a series of roundtables, first inside Israel. We invited internationals, so the Israelis would like to come and talk, so the internationals are not left alone in the room with traitory me. And we started to really map the obstacles, and we saw that what the Israelis are saying, what the Egyptians are saying, what the Iranians are saying, are actually not that far. When we asked about the components, not that far. But do you imagine that it can happen? No. So then we started with our own exercise. What if we imagine that they actually want to achieve? And then we wrote the first draft treaty that was then put in front of them in 2017 at the UN several times. They hated it at the beginning. They hated that they realized that I probably have something to do with it because I'm an Israeli and I'm a woman in the Middle East. It's not, the best beginning. And but we managed to, with our roundtables, we managed to form really good relations with some of the Arabs and even the Iranians. We had a roundtable in Zurich. It's very rare that we get to do them because they cost money and we're an operation with no money.
Right.
And we managed to bring diplomats to a truck and a half and experts from the Middle East to one room in Zurich, 35 people. We gave them this draft treaty that was not perfect, of course, and we asked them to talk about what they would like, which is the obstacles on the first day, but then to put it aside, and we promised to go back to them on the last day. And then we started to ask them to make this draft treaty better, dissect it, attack it. What happened is that on the second day, they were so busy working on solutions that on the third day, they didn't want to go back to obstacles. In 2018, they passed a resolution at the UN that calls for a yearly conference, a UN conference in New York on the zone until they'll reach an agreed text. And I can say with pride that even though I never put my name on this because I wanted it to work, that last time I was at the UN, it was the Egyptian ambassador that talked to me over the podium and said, and acknowledged my work and said, we are now in the fourth meeting and you gave us enough food for thought. And from impossible, we made something for the language. I don't know if it will work. I don't know if they can reach an agreement, but I do know that for 4 years now, they're working on a solution in good faith.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I want to point out that that this Middle East nuclear weapon free zone goes back to the 1960s in a joint declaration between Egypt and Iran.
72, yeah.
And then later in 1974, it resulted in a UN General Assembly resolution, which was broadened in 1990 through the Mubarak initiative to cover all weapons of mass destruction. That would be nerve gas, chemical weapons, biological weapons, etc. And in fact, 3 countries have been found to be in violation of that agreement for using biological weapons in their own countries against their own people: Iran, Iraq, and Syria.
Chemical weapons. Yeah. I don't think Iran was using it, but Iraq was using it against Iran.
Exactly. And do you want to say something about that? How that treaty was broadened, and how other players than Israel have been found to be in violation of it, and that kind of sets the stage for what's going to be what the world will tolerate, what kind of behavior the world will tolerate.
So as we could see, the world is tolerating a lot. We just say that we won't tolerate it, but tell to the Ukraine that the world will not tolerate an invasion, and tell the Syrians that the world will not tolerate the usage of chemical weapons. And you can't tell the Israelis much anyway, because unlike the other states in the Middle East, the Israelis never sign any agreement or treaty, and treaties only bind those who sign them, right?
Right.
So Israel is not breaking the law by possessing. Pakistan is doing it, India is doing it. I mean, they're all states that are not signed on any agreement that prevents them from doing it. We still want them to get rid of it, and for that we need a regional approach that will allow them to do it in a safe place. I mean, if you look at the US, and why wouldn't the US disarm from its nuclear weapons, even though the US cannot use its nuclear weapons without bringing humanity to an end? I mean, that's a fact. And yet, still the US possess nuclear weapons. So you know that the US won't move until it will be sure that Russia is doing the same, and that North Korea is doing the same, that other nuclear adversaries are doing the same. And you need to create the terms for that to happen. And it won't work without an internal campaign in states that can have them, like the US and Israel. And for Israel, we don't have a nuclear adversary now, unless you want to call Pakistan, because they're a Muslim state with a bomb. But we have Iran that doesn't possess nuclear weapons now.
Yeah.
Now, what is standing between Iran and nuclear weapons? Not the IAEA, not the sanctions, not any of the things inflicted on Iran by the US, but a decision If Iran decides, Iran will have nuclear weapons. That's it. I mean, if the US got it in 45 with the knowledge of 45 in the middle of the war with American experts, why do you think that Iran can't get it like in few months once they decide to?
Right.
And if they haven't, it's because they haven't decided to.
Sharon, I got a final question going back to the peace process. Israel has its own perspective on the peace process. Palestine has its own perspective, but the United States has a third perspective. Can you explain to our audience how our perspective differs from Palestinians and Israelis, and how we actually may be interfering with an organic, spontaneous peace?
Well, I have to say that since October 7th, I'm going to say something that never in my life I thought I'll be caught alive saying, thank God for the US. Never in my life I thought I'll say this sentence. And for Biden for being the responsible adult in the room.
Okay.
Thank God for that. I mean, imagine it was Trump. And you don't have to imagine. I have nightmares that it's Trump again before we end this war. The US has its own agenda, of course, internal and external. On one hand, you give us a pass on anything, and you think that it's on our own. No, maybe you don't think, but I'm talking about, of course, the governments and the administration and so on, not on you two, right? So the US is supporting Israel, blocking vetoes and so on, but also mimicking the language. I mean, when the US delegate is reading a statement at any nuclear conference, when he talks about Israel, it's almost with an Hebrew accent. You know that it's a cut and paste from the ministry in Israel. I mean, seriously, is it healthy? Who decide what Israel is saying? Netanyahu. Is Netanyahu pro-Israel or against Israel? So does Biden trust Netanyahu? I don't think so. I don't think anyone trusts Netanyahu. I don't think Netanyahu trusts Netanyahu. So how come when it comes to nuclear weapons, the Americans are so with Israel? Now, of course, they can't call us for stopping to stop possessing, but they can support the November conference, the UN conference on the zone, which they are not. They're actually putting sticks in the wheels in a way.
Did President, going back a ways, again, with regard to the U.S. views on the peace process, did President Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, help or hurt the peace process?
I'm not sure. I think because it kept giving a way of a sense as if something is being worked on, which is comprehensive. And I think that they kept it on the table, which is good. You need to keep it on the table. They never let it slide because there were times that was the only table existing, right? And you have to keep it there. People need to know that it's still something that the American wants. What I don't understand, to be honest, is how easy the Israelis can really be disrespectful to promises that they make to the American administration, and the American administration just let them go. This is not healthy. In relations, it's not, if we're the little kid, it's not educational, and it definitely doesn't help. If the Americans think that we need to have peace, they should promote peace, and they should take something back if peace doesn't happen.
Do you support?
I'm not calling for sanctions.
Do you support the billions of dollars in military aid that the United States gives to Israel?
Yes and no. If it's the only way for us to exist right now, then of course, yes, I want to exist. Is this the way to promote peace and stability? Some of it might, not all of it. To have a peace agreement with Arab states in the Middle East, when the United States knew, and they knew, I know I told them, that to have a peace agreement with some states in the region between them and Israel, normalization, neglecting the Palestinian, even though the Arab states always promised that they will not have normalization with Israel without Palestine, the Abraham Accord are some of the reasons for what happened now in Gaza. Yeah, that's the Americans too. We want to sell weapons.
We don't want to let you go. We just have a few minutes left, and it's been really enlightening and informative, and I know I've learned a lot. What is the website that you mentioned earlier, and what can we as listeners do about this issue?
So first, thank you for asking. The website is wmd-free.me, but if you write in Google Middle East Treaty Organization, you'll find us. Or my name, you'll find us.
Okay, METO, yeah.
METO, we call it METO. This is one thing that you can help. I mean, we're an organization that works with no funds for many reasons, but we do need them in order to convene roundtables and to continue our work. So whatever peace organization, group of people that want to book a Zoom meeting with Imad and myself, Imad is my Iranian partner, we're co-directors. We are giving nice lectures, and it will be really nice. What can you do to help? Look at both sides as if they're children that you really love, and find a solution, and only then act. Don't act on hate, even if it feels justified. No hate is justified.
And are you based in, where are you based?
I'm in Israel.
You're in
I'm
Israel.
between Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Okay.
In a
It
small,
is so
small place.
refreshing to have a Israeli peace activist on the show. It really gives, our treatment of the subject a fresh focus.
Yes.
An Israeli focus, a peace focus, but also a feminist focus. I think, as with most matters, I think women will be the answer. I look forward to having you and your Iranian counterpart on the air.
Yes, that would be terrific.
That would be terrific.
We would love to join.
And I'll make a small donation to your organization as well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate any dollar, shekel, or franc.
Well, it'll be in dollars that are being constantly devalued as our treasury piles up $36 trillion worth of national debt.
Sharon, any last words? Any last words before we go?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And
Okay.
I wish you peace, and I wish that Trump won't be our next president. And good luck.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. We've been speaking with Sharon Dolev.
And spell her name so listeners can Google her up.
Sharon is Sharon. Gaya is Gaya. I hope I'm saying it
Actually,
right.
it's just Sharon Dolev usually.
Sharon Dolev. Okay, Delov. And thank you so much for correcting me.
Dolev.
Dolev.
Right. Yeah.
She is the founder and director of the Israeli Disarmament Movement, a co-founder and executive director of the Middle East Treaty Organization, which we are going to Google when we want to.
And an Israeli campaigner for the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize winning international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. ICAN.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That is our show. Just a program reminder, we will be back on Thursday, February 29th. This is leap year. And we will have a show then, so we hope that our listeners will tune in. And until next time, thank you to Sharon and to the studio and KMUD for all that they've done to bring this program.
Especially thank you to KMUD. This is your community radio station, Peeper-powered radio. Please become a member. Please become an underwriter. Please continue to support this important resource in Northern California.